Welcome to Adding Fuel to the Hire, a podcast for hiring managers and job seekers across all types of dealerships. With over 20 years collective recruitment experience, Rowan, Tony and Phil draw upon their knowledge to help you navigate through the recruitment and job hunt process. For more information, head to our website, addingfueltothehire.com. Welcome to another episode of Adding Fuel to the Hire. I'm your host today, Rowan Phil, and today I've got Phil Lysader with me. How you going, Phil?
Good. How are you going?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad.
Good.
Today we're talking about hiring for the service department. So busy department within the dealership.
Yes, certainly.
And comes with a lot of challenges for finding
Sure.
the right people. So why don't we dive right into it and start talking about it. So the service department, obviously a lot of positions make up the service department. Why don't we cover off on some of those and some of the challenges within each of those roles?
Yeah. Look, service departments, obviously it depends on the dealership you're in, and there's a million different setups. Generally speaking, you'll have a few technicians. If you're a truck dealership or a car dealership or something like that, you'll probably have a service advisor as well. Interestingly, in a lot of agricultural dealerships, I've found that often tends to fall on the service manager. Just in terms of the customer contact and that sort of thing. And then you'll have a service manager as well, generally. So there's variations to that. If you've got quite a big department, you'll have a foreman or a workshop manager or something like that. Maybe even a few service advisors as well. It really depends on your demand and how work flows through your service department, really.
Yep. Okay. And I think it's fairly well known that hiring technicians, both heavy diesel but also automotive technicians, is a challenge.
Yep.
And I think we'll do an episode dedicated purely to hiring technicians.
That's right.
I guess touch on briefly about some of those challenges with technicians and let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, so the number one challenge is there's just not enough. There's just not enough people that have come into the trade over the last few years. I think that's the main issue you really have. The other thing is, market rates are really, really competitive. I've talked to a lot of particularly heavy vehicle dealers and agricultural dealers in particular that have said, look, we want to pay them more, but we physically can't. Yeah. Because if we pay them any more, then we're losing money doing service, and we need the service department as a business unit to obviously be profitable.
Yeah.
So there's two challenges to it. There's the one side of it is there's just not enough to go around for everyone and for everyone's needs to be satisfied. And the other side of it is, the pay rates have really been pushed up.
Yes.
Because of that, there's such high demand and such low supply to the point where a good technician can choose where he wants to work. They can choose what they want to do. They can choose the brand they want to work on. They can choose whether they want to go into mining or whether they want to work in a dealership or wherever it is. And they'll generally get the money they're looking for.
Yep. And I guess what are some opportunities around finding technicians? Just briefly, where can people find them? There's got to be some. I know that there is a shortage, and they're hard to find, but there's got to be some out there. Where can people find them that maybe they haven't thought of previously?
Look, that's a tough one. If I knew the complete answer to that, we'd be very rich. Good apprenticeship programs is one thing. Treating your current mechanics really well is another thing. Giving them vehicles where you can, that's a big bonus because that's, $30,000-$40,000 they don't have to worry about in terms of car repayments and that sort of thing. Overtime, when they do overtime, make sure you give them penalty rates.
Yep.
Don't say, we'll give you a higher flat rate, but then you give them 40 hours of overtime a week. That's not very attractive to a lot of guys. They want to, when they do extra work, give them some overtime. If there is a breakdown roster that they get scheduled on for, make sure they got, a flat at least, $200 or something like that as a bonus, just to start. And then obviously anything they do on that breakdown roster is again on penalty rates. So there's a few things you can do to attract them. So it's hard to find them because they're often in full-time employment. A lot of the time they are happy if they're really good and they've got the right package. So it's about enticing them into something that they haven't got at their current role.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk service advisors.
Yeah.
Not every dealer has them or has a need because, as you said, some dealers use their service manager or they might have a service clerk or something like that. But What are some of the challenges in finding a good service advisor for dealerships?
Look, service advisors I found are great to deal with when you've got a good service advisor. They're good with their phone. They're good to talk to. It comes down to flexibility a lot of the time. So service advisors are extremely prevalent in automotive dealerships. If you are, say, a heavy vehicle dealership like a truck dealership looking for a service advisor, being open to bringing someone on from another dealership industry will make your life a lot easier. So, there's very few service advisors that specialize, just in trucks, for example.
And also, automotive have traditionally had a very high level of customer service. They're very highly scrutinized on that, and a lot of incentives are based on that.
Yeah.
So I think it's fair to say that most automotive service advisors have probably a higher level of customer service than perhaps a heavy vehicle service advisor who hasn't had that scrutiny on that, because not a lot of truck manufacturers or tractor dealers look at that customer service score. So,
correct.
Not having that scrutiny means that they haven't had to improve on it, whereas automotive have over the years. So
that's right.
Hiring somebody that comes from an automotive dealer could actually bring in a whole new level of customer service to your clients.
That's right.
Maybe they haven't experienced before, and I think it could be a good option.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, if you just look at sheer volume, a truck dealership might have 20 to 30 ROs come through in a week. Some car dealerships have 40 to 50 cars come through a day.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So just volume wise and being able to keep a cool head when it does get even busier than that is really, really important. Obviously, if you're from that car dealership background, and then anything that gets busy for a truck dealership, you'll be able to handle, because you've been there, you've done that, you know what it's like to push through ROs and to push through customers while still being extremely polite and giving them the service they want.
Yeah, definitely. Service managers, probably the most frequent role we recruit.
Yeah. Interestingly.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think so. A lot of service managers obviously started off as technicians. That's often the path they take. You start off as a technician, then you might go into like a workshop foreman or a workshop manager type of role, and then you move up into a service manager's role. I think sometimes maybe people are working on the tools is one thing, and then working behind the desk is another. They might think they really want to get off the tools, and they just want to sit behind a desk and be more desk bound and that sort of thing. It's easier on your body at the end of the day. And then once they get into it, I've heard this a lot. I'm not making this up. That they say, oh, look, it's actually easier to work on the tools.
Yeah.
Because you don't have people calling you up, complaining to you at, 8 o'clock at night or on the weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's a big aspect to it. And I think a service manager's role tends to be quite demanding. In a lot of industries, for a lot of customers, they're the first point of contact.
Yes.
Especially if they're long-standing customers. This pertains more so to heavy vehicle dealerships. Where you've got businesses that have bought from this dealership for years and years and years, and so they just go through the service manager because they know we've got such a big account there. They know us, I know them, and so you're pretty much always on call. There's so many service managers that do 50 to 60 hours a week, week in, week out. So it's a demanding role.
Yeah, and some of those more senior service management roles or roles at a larger dealership are probably more business focused than they are technically focused. So. Quite often you may not need a qualification or previous experience as a technician to be able to do the role, because it's mostly about growing the customer base and making sure the customer service is to a certain standard. So, there's a lot more that goes with the role than just, being able to manage mechanics, which is probably more of a foreman's type position or workshop controller where you're on the floor managing the workload and distributing that work around.
That's right. And I think service managers, now that I think about it, I think service manager roles are probably the most widely spread role I've had in terms of duties and responsibilities, but also in terms of salary.
Exactly.
I've seen anything from as low as $60,000 to as high as $120,000 a year.
Yeah.
So it's, double. That's a big gap,
Yeah.
So the roles vary so much as well.
Yeah, it's definitely not a one size fits all, is it, for the title service manager?
Correct.
There is just so much more in it, and it varies on what your industry is.
Yeah, and it varies on department as well, how big it is. You might have a department where you've got 3 mechanics, an administrator, and then it's the service manager, or you might have 15 mechanics, 2 service advisors, and then 2 administrators and a warranty clerk. That's, those are 2 completely different, completely different roles essentially.
Yeah, exactly. I want to talk about, overall challenges with the service department and finding people for them. Given that it is such a high demand, or it's really hard to find people for that department on your technician side, and then being able to offer that good customer service. What do you think, is obviously being able to find those people and acting quickly is paramount. What do you say to that? What sort of, improvements could people make to their process to be able to make sure that they're going to be able to fill more of those service manager roles?
Or
service department roles, right?
No, definitely. Look, speed is the number one thing, I think, in the service department. Service department or service employees in general are in very, very high demand, whether that's in heavy vehicle dealerships, car dealerships, or in mining companies. If you really want to secure those top guys, you have to be very, very quick. You don't want to take too much time in the process. The other thing you want to do is you want to make sure that the money you're offering is on par with what they're looking for. A lot of service department guys I found are very honest with what they're looking for. They say, look, this is the money I'm after.
Yep.
This is what I'll accept. And often they have a choice. So lowballing them when they say, I want 100K as a service manager, and you lowball them and say, I'll give you 75.
Yeah.
You're probably going to lose them.
Yes, exactly. So I think another opportunity to be able to, increase the number of candidates that you could look at is hiring outside of your current industry. So not having those blinkers on and just looking, if you're in a truck dealership, not looking for somebody who's just come from a truck dealership, being open with some other industries as well. So we've already mentioned automotive, could be agricultural or heavy equipment, mining equipment, something like that.
That's right.
Being more open-minded about people from those industries can make it easier to find more options for you to consider for the role.
Yeah, for sure. I've always thought, particularly with the service department, make a list of things that you really, really want. Write down your non-negotiables, and then draw a line under number 2 or 3 and say, right, these are my true non-negotiables. This is truly what I really need. And anything below that, I can sort of, I can compromise on that. And a lot of the time, I always say, look, try and look beyond your own industry.
Yeah, exactly. And also maybe even looking outside of dealerships.
Yeah.
A non-franchise workshop, or somebody who's worked at as a RACV mobile mechanic or something like that. They've got skills.
Yeah.
I'm sure they may not tick all the boxes for the dealership, but they've got enough skills there and the qualification to be able to step in there and start learning.
Yeah.
And if they're looking for a long-term career where they can work their way up through a department, then that is a good opportunity for them.
That's right. Yeah. And the one example that we always for me at least, always comes up is people who've grown up on farms. They did their mechanic trade on a farm somehow, or they got it accredited through, prior learning or whatever it is, and now they want to get into a dealership. They've worked on agricultural equipment for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And now they just want to get into a dealership. So it's don't discount them. Take a look at them and have a talk to them.
And you've also got service coordinators who've worked for large, like leasing companies or even truck fleet companies. There's a lot of different types of positions that are somewhat similar to dealership type positions that may get overlooked in the process. And you may discount those people when they could be quite suitable for the role.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think that pretty much covers everything for what we're going to talk about just in general for the service department.
Yeah.
As I said, we do have a future episode coming up just around mechanics and technicians and some of the tips and tricks you might use to try and find some of those people. So keep an eye on the podcast feed for that in the future. But for now, we'll say goodbye and we'll catch you next week.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Adding Fuel to the Hire. If you have any questions or you'd like to hear us talk about a particular topic, why not send us an email at podcast@addingfueltothehire.com. If you like what we do and would like to support our podcast, please leave a review on your podcasting app of choice. For further information, please visit our website, addingfueltothehire.com.